Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Navis Nobilite. I am Captain Zelnick, and we are going to be going over the Space Marine special rules and fleet lists. For all of you pauldron lovers everywhere, we're going to talk about what makes the Space Marine fleet great. So, let's begin. First things first, the Space Marine leadership. Space Marines, one of their greatest advantages is they have an excellent set of leadership. The whole they shall know no fear thing really does apply even in space. Their minimum leadership is leadership 8. How great is that? The simple ability that you don't really fail your command checks that often is so critically important to the Space Marine lists because getting those reloads, getting those lock-ons, and getting those brace for impacts really matters. Okay, so 1 to 2, leadership 8, 3 to 4, LD 9, 5 to 6, LD 10. 1 in 3 chance of getting any one of these. There's no critical horror of rolling a 1. It's a great leadership bracket. Now, attack rating, this is more for campaigns, but Space Marines have a starting attacker initiative rating of 3. Boarding actions and in-run attacks. So, to no one's real surprise, Space Marines are basically built to fight on spaceships. The whole space element actually matters, as opposed to them fighting on weird alien worlds. So they have a lot of special rules in regarding to boarding actions and hit and run attacks. Namely, when you board somebody, you automatically add +2 to your boarding modifier, to your D6 roll. No matter what, you just add that +2. It's phenomenal. It's excellent. Just remember, though, other modifiers can reduce that final modifier, but the fact that they start with the +2 is just phenomenal. That doesn't make them the best in the game. There are things that are better at boarding than they are, but usually it requires certain very specific rules in order to get there. But also, when you do any kind of hit and run attack, you get +1, which means you're never going to fail a hit and run attack unless you try to board another Space Marine player, and you have the opportunity to cause fires. That is really important. Also, when you are targeted by hit and run attacks, there is a -1 modifier applied to the enemy roll. It is hard to hit and run a Space Marine player. Now, planetary assaults and exterminatus. Planetary Space Marines excel at planetary landings and attacking enemy-held systems. Their entire organization and the weapons and ships at their disposal are designed solely for the purpose of reclaiming or destroying planets that have fallen into enemy hands. This is why Space Marines are not perfect at the fleet engagement, because their purpose is claiming planets and boarding people. That's it. That's why your precious Space Marines, your precious Jarheads, are not going to be able to go up to a lot of enemy fleets and match them gun for gun. You have to outthink and outmaneuver your enemy. In planetary assault scenarios, Space Marine strike cruisers and battle barge earn 2 assault points for every turn they spend landing troops or bombarding the planet, rather than the 1 point as normal. In an exterminatus scenario, the battle barge can be used as an exterminator, unchanged from the following datasheet, which means you do not have to remove your prow weapons for the exterminator. That is very important. They come with all of those things standard, which means all of your firepower is at your disposal. In addition, once Battle Barge is in position to exterminate the planet, you need to only roll a 3 instead of a 4. So, again, I have to reiterate this. Why are Space Marines not amazing in fleet engagements? Because they are the kings of planetary assaults and exterminatus. Alright, Space Marine weapons. Some weapons function differently for Space Marines as described below. The vaunted bombardment cannon. Space Marine battle barges carry a heavyweight battery of bombardment cannons as part of their main armament. Bombardment cannons are huge, turret-mounted linear accelerators capable of launching a salvo of heavy magma bomb warheads. As the name implies, bombardment cannons are used primarily for pounding planetary defenses into rubble and giving devastating orbital support to Space Marine landing forces, but they're equally devastating in ship-to-ship combat and capable of blasting apart any capital ship in just a few salvos. Now, typically bombardment cannons have a lower number of strength per mount, so don't expect to be shooting a huge amount of bombardment cannons at any given time, but when you do fire them at a target, bombardment cannons always hit on a 4, just like a lance. And bombardment cannons also inflict critical hits on a 4 instead of a 6. But remember, they utilize the gunnery table in all of the shifts involved. So you'll never get the full number of shots, but you do hit like a lance and you crit on a 4, which makes them particularly dangerous weapons to deal with when you are fighting them. Also, they always hit on a 4 against enemy ordnance, which means if you're dealing with somebody like the Tau or dealing with Tyranids, you have a really good shot of removing the enemy's, assault boat giant mass of death, or a bomber wing, or any form of ordnance that you may not like. So remember that bombardment cannons always hit on a 4 or more, no matter the target's armor or even against ordnance. Really nasty against the Eldar, by the way, who normally require 6s to shoot them down, even when you're using turrets. So, again, bombardment cannons are your friend. Now, ordnance. Rather than bombers or fighters employed by the Imperial Navy forces, the Adeptus Astartes make exclusive use of the Thunderhawk. They also make use of other types of ordnance not widely used in the Imperial fleet. Space Marine vessels may fire boarding torpedoes instead of ordinary torpedoes. You do not need to pay for this upgrade. As detailed in the Ordinance Rules of BFG, remember these rules are Space Marines and they have +1 to hit and run attacks. Now, Thunderhawk Gunships. They always have a speed of 20. Now, I'm going to try and wrap all of this up as best I can. They count as assault boats and fighters, and they are resilient, which means if you hit another piece of ordnance, you roll a 4 or better. If you roll a 4 or better, you stay on the board, you can't move any further that ordnance phase, and if another piece of ordnance hits them, you take them off. So they can take up in one round a total of 2 pieces of ordnance total. Now, uh, obviously, they work as a assault boat. That the 4-up save does not prevent them from removing when they hit an enemy ship. If you hit an enemy ship, you take them off because basically they just disgorged all of their stuff into the enemy ship. Anything that has a refit for Thunderhawks may only carry Thunderhawks. Plain and simple. You can't have bombers, fighters, and Thunderhawks. Nice try though. Okay. Thunderhawk Annihilator is a specialized gunship only by the Crusading chapters. Forsaking its transport capacity in favor of a powerful Annihilator cannon, it provides Crusading chapters the kind of thunderous firepower normally provided with bombers, or the battle titans of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Thunderhawk Annihilators combine the abilities of bombers and fighters. They only move 20 centimeters. They are resilient, which means they get the 4-up save, which is also phenomenal. It is literally a resilient fighter bomber with a full attack spread. They share the same rules as the orcs when it comes to the bonus of 1 attack when you make the attack. In the case, if you are doing that, at least one of the Thunderhawk Annihilators must survive against turrets for that to matter. Once they finish their attack runs, they are removed normally. Okay, drop pods. All Space Marine capital ships are equipped with drop pods. These add nothing to the profile and are not treated as ordnance in any respect. Drop pods enable Space Marine capital ships to quickly deploy Space Marines through a surface and impart a +2 assault points for each capital ship during the planetary assault instead of +1. On to Honor Guards. Most chapters maintain a special bodies of honored Space Marines with extraordinary experience, given over to form the personal retinue of company captains, great heroes within the chapter, or even the chapter master himself. Once per turn, you may use the Honor Guard. If your fleet list includes them, all the normal rules for teleport attacks apply. Basically, it's a super teleport attack, except that they may be used in addition to a normal teleport attack this turn. The player may roll 2 dice and choose which one to use as the result, including the normal +1 bonus. So basically, if you do a teleport attack and you select Honor Guard, instead of rolling 1d6 +1, you roll 2d6 and choose which one you want. It gives you a little bit more selective and surgical pressure to use against your enemy. Now, Terminator boarding parties. Taken from the Elite First Company, blah blah blah. Once per turn, a vessel-equipped Terminator boarding parties may use them when conducting a hit-and-run attack. They roll 2 dice for the hit-and-run attack and apply both results, including the normal +1. So, the Terminators may be used in addition to a normal teleport attack that turn. So if you have Honor Guard and Terminator boarding parties, you can dump all of it on top of an enemy and cause an enormous amount of damage to an enemy ship, and certainly disable at least 3 different systems or cause fires. Now, on to the actual chaos, normal Space Marine Codex Astartes fleet list. This is the bare bones Astartes fleet list. You have the fleet commander. You may include one master of the fleet. If your fleet includes any battle barges, he must be assigned to the battle barge in preference to a strike cruiser. If the fleet is worth over 750 points, the master of the fleet must be included to lead it. Master of the fleet is leadership 10 and 50 points. Very, very cheap for what you get. But he does not get any rerolls. You have to purchase them. Fortunately for Space Marines, they're very, very cheap as well. One reroll is 25 points. 2 extra rerolls is 50 points. And 3 extra rerolls is 75. You may also, in the Master of the Fleet ship, may carry a Terminator boarding party. What vessels can you take? You may have 0 to 3 battle barges. You may include 1 Space Marine battle barge for every 1,000 points of the fleet that you have. You may include a single Venerable battle barge, counting as one of the 3 allowed, chosen from any Imperial or Chaos battleship, Grand Cruiser, Battlecruiser, or Heavy Cruiser at the listed cost, plus an additional 35 points for its Space Marine crew. Now, this doesn't apply to the Sedito Aparimi or whatever the hell it's called, but the standard battle barge is sitting at 425, and it is your basic bread and butter battleship for the Space Marines. The Venerable Battle Barge gives you a lot of multi-tooled specialist options for making your fleet just slightly more effective depending on the kinds of people you may encounter. There are a lot of excellent options. A lot of people tend to take things like the Executioner Grand Cruiser, the Repulsive Grand Cruiser, the Apocalypse Battleship, the Emperor Battleship, the Styx Heavy Cruiser, the Armageddon Battle Cruiser. A lot of choices are at your disposal. Just realize that you cannot take any upgrades that are listed in the ship that are listed in the ship stats. You have to take it bare bones. So, and you have to paint it in the same way as the rest of your fleet. So, bear that in mind. You have a lot of options, but some of those options are somewhat limited because you can't take the cool upgrades involved. Now, your cruisers. You may take strike cruisers and strike cruisers only. Now, there are several ways to take strike cruisers that will fill in all of the gaps that you may need, but recognize that this is a very fast fleet, and it's meant to be filled with strike cruisers, and more specifically, your escorts. And the basic Codex Astartes fleet list lets you have access to the rapid strike vessels of the Cobra, the Sword, and the Firestorm. And, of course, you have access to the superior Hunter, Gladius, and Novas. Now, as you can see, the point costs have been adjusted to apply the Space Marine rules to them. These are basically just cheaper versions and cheaper and inferior versions of these 3. Now, in my experience, I find that simply taking the Space Marine equivalents is the better option because they are faster and they are tougher. I recommend looking at the videos on the Hunter, the Gladius, and the Nova to see the specifics in regards to those escorts. So, the Space Marine Codex Astartes fleet, of course, you can, any ship with launch base carries Thunderhawk Gunships. Ships with torpedo tubes are automatically armed with both normal torpedoes and boarding torpedoes. This is an escort-centric list. The escorts are where your firepower is. Strike cruisers are basically just souped up, armored up, and highly modifiable Dauntless-like cruisers. They are mostly meant to be just tough enough to either get to a planet for a planetary assault, or get close to an enemy ship for a boarding action. All of the ship destruction capacity exists in these 3 ships. The Nova, the Gladius, and the Hunter are heavily upgunned, they are expensive, but they are very, very fast, and they are very effective at killing pretty much anything in the game, and they have Space Marine crews. You can, if you so desire, mass them up against an enemy ship and board the hell out of them, and you'll have a pretty good chance of winning, too. Just make sure you got a lot of them there. Now, another thing to consider is the other zone of ship destruction is your Venerable Battle Barge, depending on what you pick. You do not have access to fast ordnance in this game beyond your torpedoes. The Space Marine Thunderhawk is a great fighter and a great assault boat, but it's not that great at intercepting incoming enemy ordnance. It can be easily intercepted by other enemy ordnance, and it can be really easily destroyed before they get to the enemy. So bear all of that in mind. Your ordnance game is not particularly strong, even if they are resilient. So that's why all of your strike cruisers can launch at base 2 of them. All of your strike cruisers, you can dump out lots of them for your defense, and you're going to need it. So if you are playing as a standard Space Marine list, your goal is to maintain flexibility, to use that high leadership to move in and out of terrain, and to maintain the advantage of maneuverability and speed, because your strike cruisers and your escorts are very fast, and you need to get in and do those ramming and boarding actions as many times as you possibly can. Do not expect to come through this battle without losing some stuff. Your strike cruisers are pretty fragile. They only have 6 hits. They have to take an upgrade to get 2 shields. So I understand that a lot of Space Marine players are very dedicated to their chapters, but this game makes it clear Space Marines, planetary assault specialists, and boarding specialists, they aren't allowed to have the big ship killing guns that they used to. So, moving on. The Crusade list. Now, this is for all of you Black Templar fans out there. The kind of people that just love to go out and meet people, whether or not they're actually meant to, use stuff in an offensive manner. Gotta love Black Templars. Okay, so what do you get? First things first, the Master of the Fleet is exactly the same. All of the points are the same along with the boarding party. Now, you also have this weird little option here. You can take, if you so desire, and your fleet is worth at least 2,000 points, you can take a Fortress Monastery, and that's just a standard fleet engagement. Why? Because I'm a crusade list. I can do what I want. If I'm going to beat the enemy by bludgeoning them to death with a Fortress Monastery, I'm going to. Now, the thing about the Fortress Monastery, it's 1,000 points. So you're dumping a ton of points into a stationary defense, but God, it has a lot of firepower. Now, as base of operations for the entire chapter, the Fortress Monastery may purchase rerolls, which it may use for its own command checks only. If the Master of the Fleet is assigned to a Fortress Monastery, its rerolls are added to that of the Master of the Fleet. An excellent little advantage, because if you take that good old Master of the Fleet, you can get you basically can get up to 6 rerolls by putting him on the Fortress Monastery. Now, what can you take? You can take exactly the same rules for battle barges, venerable and standard, 1 per 1,000 points. And you may take, predictably, your venerable battle barge from anywhere in the Chaos or Imperial lists. And you can take 1 to 10 strike cruisers. No surprises there. Now, your escorts. You do not have access to the rapid strike vehicles. So you don't have the cheap options. Bear that in mind. You'll still need these guys. This, again, is still where your ship killing power comes from. Now, your Ordnance rules are a little different. Any ship with launch bays carries Thunderhawks and Thunderhawk Annihilators. That's right, it carries both. So you have a little bit more killing power with your strike cruisers. So it's actually probably a better idea to take fewer of the specialized strike cruiser variants and take more of your standard ones that have that beautiful power of the Thunderhawk Annihilator. Now, you may take any battle barge or strike cruiser may take an honor guard. So that's another handy little advantage, and it's only a 10-point upgrade. Okay. If attack rating, if Space Marine Crusade Fleet has an attack rating of 3, if it includes the Fortress Monastery, it's attack rating of 1 because it's a stationary giant, it's a giant stationary target. It's really hard to surprise attack someone in that regard. All right, reserves and allies. Space Marine Crusade Fleet will not take ships from or provide ships to any other fleet list as reserves or allies, including the Imperial Navy, Rogue Trader, and Adeptus Mechanicus fleet lists. They don't like anyone but themselves. Okay. Important thing: a Space Marine Crusade Fleet with a Fortress Monastery will always be the defender in a scenario. You cannot attack with a Fortress Monastery, no matter how much you try. They'll see it coming. I'm sorry, it's just too big. Players should any with the desire to pick the scenario, etc., etc., and guarding those scenarios. Now, going on to the next Space Marine option, the Dominion Fleet. These are typically effectively is the fleet of the Master of the Space Marine chapter itself. So, what can you do in a Dominion Fleet? Master of the Fleet rules are exactly the same, but you may also purchase Space Marine Captains. Okay? Now, the cool thing about Space Marine Captains is you can put them on Imperial Navy vessels, which you can take as reserves, giving them the bonus of Space Marines on the vessel. Okay? Now, very important. Imperial Navy ships led by a Space Marine captain do not gain any of the Space Marine special rules concerning boarding, hit-and-run attacks, or ordnance. You only gain the leadership benefit. Okay? Which is nice. It's a cheap little upgrade, but you can, however, give them an honor guard. So, what makes this fleet so damn special? Battle barge rules are exactly the same. Strike cruiser rules are exactly the same. You have access to rapid strike vessels, including, critically, the Falchion, which is, in my opinion, one of the more important options for you to take because it's an excellent torpedo interceptor. And, of course, your critical, the critical Space Marine Escorts. You cannot take Thunderhawk Annihilators, okay? Imperial Navy vessels have their own standard ordnance, which means you can, even if they have Space Marine captains, which means they can launch fighters, bombers, and potentially assault boats. Bear that in mind. You have a lot more flexibility with this fleet. Your attack rating is 3, reduced to 2 if you have any Imperial Navy, Mechanicus, or Rogue Trader vessels. Your reserves, and this is where the Dominion fleet comes into play. A Space Marine Dominion fleet has close ties with the nearby Imperial Navy forces. Contrary to the normal rules, a Dominion fleet can take Imperial Navy vessels as normal reserves and reinforcements during Adeptus Mechanicus, including the Adeptus Mechanicus. Non-Xenos Rogue Trader vessels. And so basically you have almost every Imperial vessel at your disposal. For purposes of choosing reserves, battle barges count as battleships. Strike cruisers count as cruisers for the selection of cruiser vessels. When reserves are taken in this manner, a fleet can have up to 12 cruisers. However, in the course of a campaign, a Dominion fleet cannot take reinforcements from the Space Marine table listed in the Battlefleet rulebook for the sake of campaigns. So, what does this mean? It means you have this fleet ultimately gives you access to way more Imperial vessels than a standard Space Marine vessel. It means you can take a Venerable Battle Barge and then technically 2 more Venerable Battle Barges, though they don't have the benefit of boarding. But you can give them that Space Marine captain and give them the better leadership. And really, you're taking these vessels for the sake of their firepower, not for the sake of their boarding benefits. So you can take a basic Gothic cruiser, which would be a great thing for a Space Marine list, because lances in high quantities and it's reasonably cheap. You could take lunars. You can take dominators. We can take a cheap Nova cannon. You have a lot of options, and if you're playing a particularly large battle, you can take another battleship along with that Venerable Battle Barge. So the Dominion fleet gives you a lot more access to a lot more stuff. It basically is I want to have lots of Venerable Battle Barges in my fleet without actually violating the rules. So ultimately, this is what the Space Marine fleet does. It is a very fast fleet that is normally specialized for planetary assaults and exterminatus missions, that can be augmented to give it a stronger fleet presence in direct fleet battles for this game. So that is the Space Marine fleets. Thank you all so much for listening. I'll talk with you all again really soon.